want you all to imagine something with me for a minute. Imagine standing somewhere far away from yourself, outside your own body, looking back at yourself. Imagine you're on top of a mountain. Imagine you're looking at the sunset. You're a small little silhouette. You can't see what color clothes you have on. You can't even see your face. Would it make you feel small and insignificant? Or would it make you feel more connected to everything around you? I actually had this opportunity earlier this year. I had my new toy with me. I just bought a drone, and I took it up to the top of Table Mountain, because I live in Cape Town now, and I shot this video that this is a still from. I put it together. It was an awesome video. Everyone really liked it. I edited the video together. I put it on the internet, and my friend watched it. And my friend watched it, and he said to me, he wrote me an email, and he said, "I've never seen Table Mountain look like it looks in this video." And that might seem like kind of a throwaway comment, but to me it was really, really profound. I thought, this is the most iconic landmark in South Africa. It's definitely the most iconic landmark in Cape Town. And this new perspective, this, what I called a toy, is actually an extremely powerful piece of technology. It totally changed how he saw Table Mountain. And I started to think, well, what else could I apply this really strong perspective shift to? This is important to me because I'm a photographer. And I always thought that if I wanted to tell someone's story, the best way to do that was to look into their eyes. It was to take photos, show people's faces, and try to create a sense of empathy by looking into someone's eyes. But I realized maybe I needed to start thinking outside the box. I live in a city where there's tons of barriers everywhere. I live in a city where there's fences, where there's walls, where there's highways, and specifically what interested me, as you can see in this photo, there's big open green areas where people have designed the city to be separate from one another. It's very difficult to see over these fences, especially if you're living in an area like this that's flat, because we live at ground level. We don't get to see this perspective very often. We surround ourselves with people that look like us. We surround ourselves with communities that seem like we should be a part of them. We drive the same cars as our friends. We have the same jobs as our friends. Our kids go to the same schools as our friends' kids go to their schools. But right next door to us, there's this community of people who live in red-colored houses. And those people in the red-colored houses, they have better cars, and they have better schools, and they have parks in their neighborhood. And oh, by the way, their houses are colored red. And that two-lane road that acts as a barrier to us physically, it also acts as a barrier to us mentally. It acts as a barrier to our imagination. We do this for a variety of reasons, I think. We tell ourselves that it's natural to bond together, to band together into tribes. We tell ourselves that it's necessary for defense, that we're defending against an enemy, that we're protecting our families. There's a whole bunch of reasons that we try to use to justify why we like to live with other people who look like us. But my question was always, who are we defending against, and who are these enemies? When I went to University of Cape Town, I was really interested in these topics, like I said. And I found this map right before I did this project. I was thinking about it. It was inside my head. This is a map based on census data. And this is particularly Cape Town, but there's maps for all the major urban metros in South Africa. And it really struck me. This is another way to look at the topic that I'm talking about tonight with data. It really struck me how, by and large, people still live in those same areas that they were placed decades ago. And they're bounded by this infrastructure. You can see on this map behind me, you can see that blue square right in the middle. It's surrounded by roads, an industrial area, a power plant, and a big green belt. It's incredible how people can't seem to get out of these environments that we've placed them into. And that's important because the next slide that I'm going to show you is income level, also based on census data from 2011. And there's a very close correlation between people's income level and where they've been placed throughout the last 5-6 decades, at least in the city of Cape Town. So, after seeing that video and after having my friend comment on it and after having all these things percolate around in my head, I decided to take this toy drone and take it down to an area near Cape Town where I live, an area called Noordhoek. And I'd often passed by there and I'd thought it was interesting because there's sort of a very low-income township area called Masipumalele right in the middle of relatively affluent housing estates. And I thought this would be a really interesting perspective shift to go down there and actually see what this looked like from the drone. And actually, this is the cul-de-sac that I flew from. I found this image on Google Street View yesterday. The housing estates in this area aren't atypical of South Africa. They're walled in with 2-meter-high fences. It's very difficult to see on the other side of those fences. It's also a flat area, so it's really difficult to see very far or to get a perspective to see what's very far away from you, because everything's flat. So I decided to try it out. I hooked up my phone to my remote controller. I put the drone in the middle of that cul-de-sac, and I took off. And this is the video that I saw when I took off. Okay, so that's the photo that I posted on my Facebook page later that night. I only had 300 likes on my Facebook page at the time, so I wasn't a very famous photographer. And I put it up there, and I went to bed, and when I woke up in the morning, there was 40,000 people that had viewed that photo. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, hundreds of shares. I'd touched a nerve somehow, and people were sharing this image like crazy. And what I thought was really interesting were the comments that people were leaving on my Facebook profile. Some of them were super passionate, some of them were less passionate, but they were all invested in what I was trying to portray here. They had all been taken by this new perspective, looking at something that they thought they knew what it looked like. The number one comment that stuck out to me was, "I didn't know that it looked this bad." I heard that from a lot of people, and I decided right then and there that even though I hadn't really even thought of continuing this project after this first photo, it was just sort of a personal project, I decided there that it was going to be my mission to actually show what my city actually looked like from the air. As I like to say, the beauty of how things really are becomes apparent when you fly above them. So I went to Hout Bay next. If you guys have ever been to Cape Town, Hout Bay is about 15 kilometers south of the city bowl. And it's right next to a township area called Imizama-Yetu. And by this time, and this was only the second day, these photos had 80,000, 100,000 views. People were contacting me from all over the world, and definitely from all over South Africa, journalists, other people. I realized right away that this was a much bigger project than just Cape Town, than just local. And I wanted to go to the rest of South Africa. So I very quickly, within the next couple weeks, bought myself a ticket to come to Durban, and I took a road trip throughout the big metro areas in this area of the country. So I went from Durban to Pietermaritzburg to the Gauteng area. And the last photo I took, which is the top left photo in this image, that was just a few kilometers from where we're sitting right now. The research that I put into all of these, like I said, I used the maps earlier. I also researched on Google Earth what the actual terrain looked like. And then I finally drove around and actually went to these areas because I had to fly at these areas. So in my research, I'm pretty confident that I've found the most unequal areas in South Africa. But I didn't want to just focus on wealthy versus poor. I wanted to make the project broad enough to incorporate sort of my artistic vision, to incorporate visual metaphors and other types of imagery that would inspire people to want to look above fences and to want to look at the other side, what was going on in their neighbors' yards, what was going on over the fences that they couldn't see over. So I incorporated it to have images like this, which is an informal settlement right next to a cemetery in Tembisa, which is also not too far from here. And a lot of people asked me, and I think probably some people still think, well, what's in it for me? Why does this matter to me? I don't live in those places. I don't really care about those things. What's the big deal? And my answer would just be, you're wrong. It does matter to you, and you should care about it. This little girl's name is Sifasile. I met her about 2 months ago in a continuation of this project working with Thomson Reuters. She lives in Monwabisi Park, which is in Khayelitsha in Cape Town. She's 12 years old. She lives in a tin shack, but she's your neighbor. She goes to a South African public school. She's going to grow up, and she's going to have kids, and she's going to work, and she's going to become your neighbor, your coworker, the compatriot that you live with in your city. She's a South African. And this is her neighborhood. This is Monwabisi Park. Just as an example of the power of shifting your perspective, going from that view that we just saw, the slide before, to where she lives now, and how effective it is at getting across certain points, I want you guys to spend the next minute and try to find where the toilets are in this photo. Does anyone see the toilets? There's not very many of them, I can tell you that. There's 25,000 people that live in Monwabisi Park. You can see right here along this road, right in the middle of that road, there's a small little block of 10 toilets. And the day that I was there, 8 of them were locked and 2 of them were broken. Those are the only toilets in this entire photograph. Everyone in this photograph has to use those 10 toilets if they want to go to the bathroom. If they don't want to use those toilets, they have to use the bush. And the bush is filled with dangers, like Sifasile's friend, who 5 years ago went to the bush to go to the bathroom and never came back. These sorts of issues, these sorts of problems that your neighbors are dealing with, that's exactly why I wanted to start this project, and that's what I'm hoping that I'm starting to get across when people want to use aerial imagery in their storytelling, in their journalism, in their policymaking. People ask me, what's my plan with the project? And I really, really hope that people are using my images, and I know they are, to plan conferences, to communicate ideas, to work on planning out how to better deliver services, how to better construct houses, how to make us all more equal. But really, deep down, what I really want out of the project is to change people's mindsets, is to get people to tap into that compassion that I know we all have, that we feel for our neighbors, that neighborly love, that want to better our neighbors who live on the other side of the fences. And to do that, we need to understand what it is they're living in and what it is they're living like. Defining the problem is the first step towards solving it. So as I finish up here, I really invite all of you guys, after you've listened to me, when you go home tonight, when you go to your big houses, behind the fences, imagine what it felt like to be on this mountain and to float away from yourself and look back in. And try to do that in your own community. Try to float above your own house and try to see yourself as part of a holistic whole in your own city. If you can visualize that, then I think our neighbors are going to thank you very much, and we're going to move very quickly towards solving these problems that affect our cities. Thanks very much.